Okay, let's just settle in to being present. What feet on the floor. Feel the refrain of that beautiful song in your heart. Take a deep breath and just feel that breath as you breathe in as it fills your lungs and as you breathe out. And I like to think about sometimes life as a river, that we are all flowing through the same river, on the same river. And that as we flow, thoughts arise and depart, experiences arise and then flow away. But there is always the river. There may be pain, there may be joy. The delight of a spring day, spring morning like this morning. And everything is in motion. But the river is always there. And just allow yourself to feel that flow, the flow of life that moves through you. And imagine that you are floating in this river that is the divine presence of love. That no matter what happens, no matter the circumstances, you are held in that divine river. And just feel that life, feel that love, feel everything flow through you. Knowing that you are always held in the divine embrace of that river. And with your next breath, come back to the room. Dry off. If you've been in the river. Give a little shake. And if you would like to come up and light a candle, please do that. Thank you.
Well, would you welcome my friend Kimberly to the stage today?
Thank you.
When I was in the final stages of interviewing to be the lead pastor here at Aldea, I happened to also go on a nature retreat. And when I say happened to, I actually feel like it was perfect timing and just one of those things. And part of that retreat is that I met Kimberly there, and we connected, and towards the end of our time together, a lot of us from the group were kind of just chatting and saying, hey, what's going on with you? What are you going to be up to? What's going on in life? And I said, it looks like I might be moving to Tucson. And she said, well, we're going to be down in Tucson for the winter. And it was just such a cool moment. And I said, well, if it all works out, then please come check us out. And so you might have noticed that her and Joe have been hanging around the last couple of months, and we've been so delighted to have them here for the winter. And getting to know her more, I've found so many just amazing, inspiring things about her story. And yes, it's a story about challenges that she's walked through and the spiritual development that's brought her through, but I also find it to be a universal story. And as we unpack some of the things that she's gone through, I've found that even though I may not directly be affected by some of the same challenges that she's been, that I find so much of myself in her story. Sometimes we need particulars to latch on to the universals. So I want to get started with our conversation, and how I want to do that is to say this. In the trailer for your one-woman show, which is an incredible feat, by the way, I love that you were able to tell your story in such a unique way. And in the trailer, you talk about this silent epidemic, and how this is something, and we've talked about it. It's something that's invisible in a lot of ways. Can you speak to what you mean by those things? Silent epidemic, invisible challenge, invisible difficulties.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. And love lives here. This is such a special place. It's been a real joy to be here visiting. And I haven't seen that trailer for quite a while, so it brought up some emotions. Hearing loss is an invisible epidemic, and I think it's invisible because it's shrouded with so much shame and misunderstanding. And I was telling Jake that hearing aid manufacturers promote that when they advertise for their hearing aids. We can make them really small so nobody will see, and you can hide them. And so many of us with hearing loss are afraid to disclose the hearing loss for, fear of judgment, fear of losing our jobs. And so, am I answering your question?
You don't have to answer my question. We just want to, we want to know you.
Okay.
So however you go for it.
And also it's invisible because I think a lot of us try to hide it. I know I did. And, I founded a support group online in response to the pandemic, because when the masks came out, I was deaf all over again. Many of us were, because we rely on lip reading. And so I founded this group called Hope, hearing other people's experiences. And we meet once a month, and we share resources, and we share our own experience and give others hope. Sometimes we have people who are completely new to hearing loss, have lost their hearing overnight. Or sometimes we have students that are studying, and they come to observe our group. And, there's so many different levels of denial and acceptance through our journeys. And so, many of us start out hiding, trying to fit in, because there's not a lot of education about hearing loss. There's not a lot of understanding. Even when people have hearing loss themselves, they don't understand a lot about their hearing loss. So if you do have hearing loss, I encourage you to learn everything you can about your hearing loss. And so what I found through my journey, and a lot of my friends with hearing loss have too, is it's so much easier to disclose that we have hearing loss, and people understand that. Most people are really understanding about that. When you don't disclose it, people make assumptions like you're stupid, you're, not interested, you're conceited, you're just checked out. And I didn't want people to think that anymore. I just find it so much easier to be open and teach people how to talk to me so I can be included, so I can participate. And I think I'm talking a lot, so I'm gonna.
I thank you. I love that, and when I hear you talk about it, it makes me think about really a larger or more encompassing epidemic of isolation that really is gripping our world right now. COVID's just one small part, but our world, and our culture, there's so much shame, like you described in that experience. There's so much need and desire for belonging, a desire to be heard, a desire to be understood. As I was thinking about this this week, I brushed up on this statistic, and again was just so sad to read that at this point, 12% of Americans report having zero close friendships. That's around 1 in 8 people, zero close friendships. Why does this happen? And when I listen to you describe your own experience, talking about the shame, I'm really alluding to the difficulty of asking for help, something that I think we all face in some way, difficulty being vulnerable, difficulty embracing and looking at the shame and finding ways to work with that. Why do you think it's so hard in our culture, in our world, to ask for help?
I think I thought about this week. I think a few things. I think that sometimes we don't want to put anybody out. And I think that stems from a deeper feeling of not feeling worthy, not enough. And who am I to ask others for help and put other people out? And then what if they say no? Then I have to deal with that rejection. I also think in our culture we have this desire for perfection, for looking good and being right all the time. And if we ask for help, then we're showing vulnerability and maybe weakness, and then we're not perfect. So I think those two things are a lot of it, and I think that encompasses a lot.
And we've talked about, just in your own experience as an educator in this field, how hard it can be for people with this specific struggle with hearing loss to ask for help. And you've mentioned to me how some of the statistics around people specifically avoiding this, like such as how long people wait to address it.
Yeah. So I studied at Gallaudet University. Some of you may know that school back in Washington, D.C. And I learned a lot about statistics and the biopsychosocial affects and effects of hearing loss. That was my favorite class. Audiology 101. And some alarming statistics. And that is, I think denial plays such a great role in hearing loss. And I just want to say, life is worth hearing. Treat your hearing loss. If others are telling you, you're not, I'm having to turn the TV up really, really loud, and there's signs that indicate hearing loss, and it's so hard to accept that, and denial plays such a great part. And I've been in and out of denial throughout my treatment, and I went deaf. I was born with hearing loss, progressive hearing loss that went untreated for most of my life. And I was deaf by the time I was 40, and now I hear electronically with cochlear implants. And I'm an advocate. And so statistically, upon diagnosis, if you can get someone to go get their hearing tested, get an audiogram, that's the first step. It takes an average of 7 to 10 years for someone to start to treat their hearing loss. That's a lot of missing out on life, and life is worth hearing. And yeah.
And when you said life is worth hearing, treat your hearing loss, something I also heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but something I felt is, for all of us, whatever it might be, life is worth living, life is worth engaging, life is worth knowing and be known. So treat whatever might be preventing you from that level of engagement with the world. And, when we were talking about this difficulty to ask for help, this way that we interact with society, and we were having a conversation not too long ago, and she was talking about how, sometimes it can be difficult and there's feelings of shame, like you don't want to put anyone out, like she said. And I was instantly brought back to being a kid and remembering being young, and sometimes you'd ask for help and scary adults wouldn't exactly give you the response that you wanted. And I remember, and I felt like, wow, that still is with me, that feeling that maybe the world isn't as helpful as I want it to be. And I realized that, there are these moments of these traumas where we become guarded, we don't feel safe. And so our way of finding safety is to say, well, I'm not going to need help. I'm not going to be vulnerable with anyone. But in this community, we're trying to embody and bring out this new story of interbeing, interconnection. And that story requires vulnerability. There's another line in your play that drew a big laugh, and you were talking about not thinking that you were missing out on deep, meaningful conversations. And I think based on the sarcasm, you were alluding to the fact that maybe you weren't in actuality. I'm just curious, clearly you've had this unique perspective, and obviously you shared your story. What are some things, such as that line, if you unpack that line for us and then kind of let us know, like, what are some things that your hearing loss has actually given you, or how has it shaped you? What are the spiritual aspects of your life that have come from this challenge?
That's a big question.
Take your time.
Before we end, don't let me forget to talk about dementia, the connection between untreated hearing loss and dementia. That's big. So when the line he's talking about is all of my life, I thought I was missing out on really deep, meaningful conversations. And I'd really be sad and in pain when I would watch people talking and laughing and, or feeling or emoting or crying, and I couldn't understand, I couldn't hear, and I was left out of that. And some of them were deep, meaningful conversations. But once I got my cochlear implants, because before my implants, I was profoundly deaf. As I said, I had progressive hearing loss over my lifetime, and I was only understanding 12% of speech. And so once I got my implants, the world just changed and opened up, and I heard so well. And I'm in 1% of population of people who get outstanding results. So my audiologist makes me say that when I talk about this, because not everyone gets those kinds of results. I was hearing immediately, and I was understanding 91% of speech. So it was remarkable. It was quite a miracle. And not everyone gets those kinds of results. 70% is good. And it's getting better all the time as technology improves and improves. And anyway, so back to once I was hearing and I was able to be in conversation, I just started noticing that a lot of people talk a lot about, can I say the word?
Well, maybe bleep yourself out.
There's
a child present.
Oh, that's okay. BS. Nothing that's, to me, really significant, meaningful, interesting, just trivial, stuff. So I get so bored with that. I've had to work so hard my whole life to understand and make meaning, a sense of anything, that I just go straight to the heart of the matter. And this brings me to the spiritual aspect. I think that I've learned to listen with my heart. I couldn't depend on my ears to make sense of things. And also, even when I did hear things right, people would lie. Like, I didn't say that. They're not owning what they're speaking about, right? There's this so confusing for me. And So I think I've really strengthened that heart muscle over my lifetime of, listening from my heart and then trusting unseen forces. And I didn't have a real religious upbringing. Well, I was raised Unitarian Universalist, so I was able to choose, my path, and I was taught to think for myself, and I'm grateful for that upbringing. But I always felt like there was something inside me that was love, that was always there for me, that was never alone, and that I would just get through. And I still feel that way. And I call that love, that power. Someone a few weeks ago asked me if I believe in God. And I said, I believe in love. And I think they're synonymous. And I think there are many names for that. So that one works for me. And so, yeah, listening with my heart, being in my heart space, having a desire for more meaningful conversations, more depth. I'm more interested in who you are than what you do. And I'm more interested in talking about dreams and ideas than I am people.
I wonder what that might be for you. What are some ways that you maybe have learned to listen with your heart? Maybe hearing loss isn't the specific for you, but maybe there's something that you have worked with and dealt with that in a way tuned you into another reality, tuned you into other things on a deeper level. And I love hearing you talk about just that way in which you're able to look at your journey. We had a series last month called Own Your Story, about really owning and embracing even the hard things for what they've given you. And at this community, at least I really love hearing stories about transformation and shifts, and just as your spirituality can evolve and change, we as people just go through different changes. And throughout some of the things that you were saying, you alluded to moments where, you felt there were some shifts, and particularly your time at Gallaudet. And I'm curious, what was something you walked away from that time with that really shaped you?
So I didn't have my implants yet. I was really struggling to hear with my hearing aids in an FM system that amplified everything, and CART, which is communication access in real time, which is the captions. And I was watching a few other students that were hearing really well. And, I asked them about it, and they said they had a cochlear implant. And, later my husband and I went to a Hearing Loss Association of America. Is a wonderful nonprofit organization that educates and advocates for people with hearing loss. You can look them up online. There's lots of resources there. I know I'm kind of going off, but we went to this conference, and it was amazing. I love to learn. I've always loved to learn, and we took all these different workshops, and we took different workshops. And he took one on cochlear implants, and then we'd get together and we'd compare notes on what we learned. But the amazing thing about this conference was it was all accessible. It was the first time in my life I went any place where it was all accessible. I could read the captions. I could hear with my FM system and plug into that loop, and I was so happy that I was being included, and I could hear and I could understand. And he had talked to me about it afterwards. He's like, I think you ought to get the cochlear implant. Actually, this is before I went to Gallaudet, because I said, no, I am not doing that. It's surgery. And, once they do the surgery, it cancels out any residual hearing. So if you have a little bit of hearing and you have that implant inserted, it cancels out your hearing. That has since changed with technology. They've made shorter electrode rods that go into the cochlea so that it can restore some of your, residual hearing. So I have one totally deaf ear, completely deaf, and then I had this ear implanted 5 years later, and I have a little residual hearing, so I can hear trucks and airplanes and, not speech. I can't understand speech at all without my implants. Anyway, so I had said, no, I'm not going to do that. Oh, then I met God's handyman, Pete, at Chicago Midway Airport. That's a great story. You know, he prayed for me. I might tell you that. Anyway, so then cut to my first class experience with Gallaudet. And watching these women here, it was a class of all women. How interesting. Okay. Anyway, and they were hearing really well. And that's when I started thinking maybe the cochlear implants could be my miracle, because 2 weeks before I got to Gallaudet, as I was traveling on my own at Chicago Midway Airport, I got lost. The flight was canceled. They put me up in a hotel. It was 10:30 at night. I was trying to get on the bus, and the bus driver was talking, and I couldn't understand, and he was mad, and everybody was like, we're waiting. And these experiences I've had all my life. So I got off the bus, and I waited, and I come into prayer, like, I'm okay, I'm safe, it's going to be okay. It might take me a while to find where I'm going, but I'll get there. So this guidance inside me, this is my internal guide, right? And I meet this man. I guess I'm telling the story. So this man walked by, this older man, and I'm sitting there, and he started talking to me, and there's noise and cars, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, I understand what you're saying, but if you come sit right next to me, I'll be able to hear you. And he came and sat down, and he said, oh, my dear, your ears are not working? And I said, I've had hearing loss my whole life, and yeah, it's pretty bad now. And he said, well, do you mind if I pray for you? And I said, well, okay. You know, he was so sincere and genuine. And he literally put his hand on my head. He just reached out, put his hand and started praying, dear God, Jesus, Mary, I don't know everything he said, but heal her, make her well, in Jesus' name, amen. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't think I'm going to wake up tomorrow and hear. But how sweet this very this compassionate, kind, caring man wanting to help me and help heal me, and then I think later when I saw everyone, and I remember your question, hearing so much better, and then after having the conference with Joe, I was like, maybe this can be my miracle. Maybe, oh thank God. Maybe if I get the implant, I'll be able to hear. And I ended up calling him a couple years later and thanked him. And that was after I did the play and all that. So to get back to your question, when I was watching everyone hearing better, and then one woman who had overnight hearing loss, she had hearing her whole life, and she lost her hearing overnight. And she said that she decided to get the cochlear implant so that her primary purpose was so that her family could stay connected to her, because she was losing that connection. And she was treating her hearing loss, not just for herself, but for her family. And that was the perspective change that changed everything for me. And I thought, wow, I have been so self-absorbed with my own pain and about not being able to connect, and people don't understand, and it's so hard. And I just was really missing that part about how hard it was for my family. And now, hearing loss, it separates us from people, and we're not meant to. We're meant to be together, to connect and be in relationship with each other. And so that's why I do the work I do, because I want people to wake up and, get out of denial and do something to treat their hearing loss, not just for themselves, but for the people who love them, that care about them, that want to stay connected. And there's such a lack of education and understanding. There's so many myths and misconceptions about hearing loss that it's just not known. We don't talk about it. And so there's this isolation that happens.
And when I think about the things in my own life that isolate me, my own work that I need to do, hearing this part of your story reminds me that my struggle is not just my struggle, that when I become isolated, it affects the world around me. It affects my family, the ones I love. And so I think this is really on a broader level a message of look at what we need to look at, embrace what we need to embrace, treat what needs to be treated, because the things that prevent you from community, they really don't just affect you, they ripple out. And so I love that, and I love the work you do, because what I'm hearing is on a meta level, you're saying connect, engage, participate. Life is there to be lived, you're not just observed. So I'm really grateful for the work you do. Just to wrap up, I just, you did mention the connection with dementia, and I just wanted to give you a chance really to share any, and especially as from the perspective of your work as an advocate, if there's any last thing you want to share to this group, just share your heart as we close.
Well, I come across people all the time that are not treating their hearing loss, or in denial about their hearing loss, or say, yes, I have hearing aids, but they're in a drawer. And I like to tell them this research came out back in 2012 from Johns Hopkins Hospital, and you may know about it now because it's becoming more and more mainstream common knowledge that there's a direct correlation between dementia and hearing loss. If you're not treating your hearing loss, you're at a far greater risk of developing dementia. You're not exercising the auditory nerve that sends the message to the brain, and the brain makes sense of it. The brain is what hears. And that scares a lot of people, because most people would rather have cancer than develop dementia. So I don't want to say that to scare people, but I sort of do, because I want you to treat your hearing loss for yourself and for others. And then lastly, just people, when they're not treating their hearing loss, they have no idea how much they're missing, how much of life they're missing, how much connection. The birds. Oh my gosh. When I got my hearing, my implants, I could hear birds. I hadn't heard birds since I was a little girl. And just listening to all the different birds, and so beautiful. So treat your hearing loss, because life's worth hearing. And to end, I am a teacher, an advocate. I do workshops, and I do consulting one-on-one. So I think you've sent everyone, oh, okay, you can go to my website and contact me that way if you want a consultation and any more support, or you want to know about any resources. So thank you for inviting me, and thanks for listening.
What do we do whenever someone at the Vision Quest, whenever someone finished sharing at the Searle, what do we do? Was it snaps, or what is the thing? What is the thing that we would do? It was like, oh, is it this?
I don't know. Oh. Well, I do this a lot.
You do this. Okay.
Is that
I think that, yeah.
So that is the sign in sign language. That's applause. That's how you applaud. That's applause. Yeah.
A lot of those.
Yeah. Thanks.
If you want to connect to Kimberly, again, you can reach her through her website. I'm going to launch us into a discussion time right now, and I want to ask these questions. What are some invisible or silent challenges that you have faced? What did they teach you? And also, why do you think it's so hard to ask for help or to be vulnerable in our society? And how can we change that? What can we do every day to face that?
Just put some love